Good afternoon, everyone. VC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. It's just got a couple of minutes, well, actually 6 minutes past midday. I am running a little bit late. Apologies for a couple of technical issues on my end, but a big shout out to everybody joining the stream live today, as well as everybody watching this on catch up. It's been absolutely wonderful. I know the markets have been a bit turbulent, but we've had 10, 12,000 people on a regular basis watching this show. And I just want to say a really big thank you to all of your messages, everything that you're coming in for, feedback on the show. We really welcome it here. We ultimately want these shows to be the very best thing that they are for you guys. And we're going to just pick up where we left off on Monday. And Craigie boy absolutely loved those when the husky is eating his show notes. Actually, she's currently just sound asleep in the bedroom. We have had a really good couple of days with Zebu Live in London. So I'd like to say a really big shout out for that event. It's one of my favorite events I've attended in London. It is just, they've got the absolute venue, the way that it's laid out, the whole structure, the flow, the speakers, everything I thought was absolutely exceptional. And I think Tobacco Dock is an absolutely killer location. It just feels like the right place for a crypto type conference. So a really big shout out. Good morning, everyone. Gio, is that you, my friend? I can't tell because I get everybody's crazy usernames now rather than their actual kind of screen names. And Jojo, there she is. So how are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Before we get into the charting, a couple of bits I want to remind everybody about. So we're still obviously under the US government shutdown, which can affect the data that we are getting. However, this week is slightly unique in the fact that on Friday, we are going to get CPI. Now, there's been some quite funny rumblings from some fun friends and bits and pieces I've spoken to, some other people in crypto as well, and the kind of broader community that are saying that the CPI is being put through at this point because they think that it's going to be soft, and printing that at the end of the week is something that Trump really wants. I don't know if that's true or not. That's kind of beyond my realm, but you could definitely imagine that being the case if you look at the consistency of how many of his tweets come in late in the equity market on a Friday. It is very tricky. Hey, Gio. Awesome. Great to have you with us, buddy. Some real legends on the show today. Long-term friends of the Nest. And actually, Gio, you can see on my screen at the moment the name at the top, the date, and it's something that I use for my intraday trading sessions. That was actually an indicator built by our good friend Gio here as well. So something we use every day on the live trading shows. So just to kind of cap off on where we are with the news situation at the moment, Friday is the major catalyst. We're getting core CPI month on month, and CPI year on year. I know this isn't on the screen, by the way, guys, just kind of running you through it. But we also come in slightly later with flash manufacturing PMI and services PMI. Now, why is this important? Well, ultimately, the manufacturing side is seen as, look at it like this. If you're getting a print above 50, it's typically indicating that the industry is in expansion, right? Below indicates contraction. So it's an interesting thought process on this, because if you get a print that's actually greater than 50, typically it's strong for the currency. Now, we know that we're in this kind of strange washing machine-esque environment at the moment, whereby things aren't necessarily washing through in the way that we see. The correlations are all over the place. A weak dollar doesn't necessarily mean positive risk markets at the moment. The VIX has been very good as well, but we've even seen, obviously, as we've had that injection of volatility, we've seen that going up alongside risk assets as well. So kind of looking through the noise within this data is going to be interesting, but this is going to be the first real kind of data that's come through in a while. So markets do have a little bit of a tendency to overreact to that. Especially, in the very initial stages of that data dropping, and especially after the fact we haven't had any for a while. So do keep that in mind. It's something that we've been kind of discussing internally and also with members at the Birb Nest, is that this could just lead to a slightly rocky road forward, yeah, and that's the thing. So we want to kind of watch that. At the moment, obviously, we can see Bitcoin really kind of just tried to have a bit of a run yesterday for a number of different reasons and catalysts. That's kind of been rejected at the key level we were hoping we were going to get a reclaim of. So let's take a look at that. And yeah, absolutely. Well, there's no data due to shut down. You're right at the moment, but not with everything. On Friday, there's going to be CPI, and we're going to get flash manufacturing PMI. They're putting those both through. The reasonings for which I'm not sure of the entire minutiae. There's a few different kind of theories on that, but for whatever reason, we will be getting that print as it stands at the moment. But you're right. On the other side of things, we haven't had obviously the data because of the shutdown. Henceforth, that's led to a lot of speculation about what happens in that nature. So if we look historically, the key points of data here is that after every government shutdown, historically, this is of course not including this one because it isn't over yet, then 86% of the time the S&P 500 has been higher a year later. You know, you can read into that what you want. The key thing I'm looking at is how kind of destabilizing does this become as it drags longer, because we don't have precedent if it runs much longer, because it would then, I believe, be the longest government shutdown. So, you know, ultimately the markets are waiting for new information. There's not a lot of new information out there. So in these kind of situations, you'll typically get kind of a little bit muted price action, or if you are in strong trends, for example, like we've seen on gold, then you can often see continuation. You know, markets and traders and investors aren't going to want to step away from assets, you know, without a good reason to do so. And not having data, typically, if we look historically, isn't enough of a reason for that. So let's take a look at where we are with the chart. Craigie boy, of course we can look at that for you as well. NBA Young Believe, how are you doing, my friend? Yeah. Lovely sentiment there, my friend. I hope you're well too, and the same for all of our wonderful viewers and listeners. So what have we got here? Let's start on the Bitcoin chart, all right? We want to make it nice and punchy today. We want to look at opportunity. Where are we standing in the market at the moment? Now, let me just pop this on a weekly and show you why we've got these levels here. This is such a key level for me. January's high, right? But I had absolute pleasure of having Trader Dank's company yesterday, and Marcin and I were speaking with him about his thoughts on the market. And it's, you know, Dank, SZ, very, you know, old school, not just friends, but, you know, really inspirations for me in the trading career, really kind of honed me in on range trading, right? So it was really interesting to see the discussions last night about, you know, ultimately pricing the higher time frame, really, really respecting these ranges that we've been discussing. And this for me is a really key level here, 109,998.9 here on OKX. This was the high that capped the market for a substantial amount of time when we saw this strong breakout above the high. This area, when it came back down, I was quite surprised by this move. I did see that as potential weakness here, but it was also a retest into this previous area of value, right? So, or fair value. You know, we've had the expansion, market imbalance, out of balance expansion. Then you get a fair value established here before the further breakout. Now, as we see these areas retested, the close below did surprise me a little bit, because when we came into this high here, which we can see was the high from May, the all-time high from May, we got an initial reaction at it here. And this wick recovery here looked quite good as well. Then obviously we had some news catalysts as well that came in, the market flushed. But again, Bitcoin showed a lot of resilience here. The following week, he got back above this level here. And then ultimately the week starting the 8th of September, we reclaimed the range and we were looking for range higher. We did get the breakout of this, but obviously we were capped by the prior all-time highs. And now we are back down outside of the range in what does look at the moment like an underside retest of this level. Okay, so I do really think we need to advise a little bit of caution at the moment. Spot plays are still the smart play, in my opinion. Playing around with leverage in these conditions can get you hurt so very quickly. In terms of our targets, we're going to establish those a little bit more on the daily, but we can see the prior weekly lows, which are in shot, and we've obviously got the weekly swing low over here, which is at 98,133 flat. Quick sip of tea. But I'm not saying we're going down to 98,133, but what I am saying is the more that we see absorption at this level from the buyers, the more buyers are trying to get back above these areas, and we see these key rejections. You know, you're looking at some point that there's going to be some form of exhaustion in there. Okay, so looking at this here, yesterday's candle, was, you know, pretty hideous, to be honest. We got the initial stage recovery here. You know, we did talk about this on Monday as well. We're not getting, you know, we are not getting too involved in this move to the highs. Why? Because we're basically testing into resistance at the moment. If we put the daily on, we had a very, very clear plan for the week. The safest plan, the plan that most people don't want to be part of. I understand, because it seems like you're getting in too high. But for me, if we're going to start reclaiming 115 level here, this is the consolidation that led to price driving lower. If we can get those sellers, those aggressive sellers offside and establish ourselves above here, we would not only be re-establishing market structure, all right, because we'd be coming from a higher low to a higher high. We would also be, putting a hell of a squeeze on those shorts. And, that's the kind of situation that really I'm looking for, however you look at it. And if you look at this here, and especially since this area has been established in this upper range, which is back in July, ultimately we've been in this game where it's highs to lows. Okay, failure here, but around about a midline, that we certainly had this key area of support and resistance here that acted very strongly as resistance. We came back in the range here, played to the range high. So now, really speaking on behalf of the bulls, you just want to see this be a deviation and price get back inside the range. So the plan we laid out on Monday was very simple. It was one of patience, all right, which is if we start closing below this level here, which is around about 105.645, then I think it becomes much more likely that we flush out these immediate lows below us, okay? We've seen a strong wick rejection here. Again, price really trying to get back above this, ultimately really selling off. I know there's a lot of news catalysts in the market that causes this as well, but ultimately, if you read through the noise, the technicals do tell you what's happened. Obviously, it's people say, oh, you can't predict things with technicals, you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah, but you can ultimately see exactly what happened in the market at different key points. And if you monitor those key points, it gives you a much better chance of getting involved in the market at levels that give you the best opportunity and the best risk to reward. So for me, we get back in this range. I think then I'm kind of looking for those long plays or those continuation plays. We start getting and closing down below this. I think the first target is the low down here, which is about 103.450. And then we've got the swing low here at 101.482. And ultimately, the weekly lower target here, the swing low here at 98.133. What I want to see at these levels is I want to see price flush out the lows and then get quick, aggressive recoveries, like we saw, basically like a reverse of this, price coming into a level very quickly, getting away from it. These, in this case here, these buyers, they're now trapped. Sellers are taking control of the market, and the buyers either, hit their stop loss, puke their positions back to the market, or ultimately look to hedge and cover, right, and take the other side of that trade by taking on new data. So we want to see it. We saw another aggressive move here and another aggressive move here. Not quite V-shaped recoveries, but you can see price darting in, pulling out. If we go back to one of my favorite rubbish analogies, think of the two buckets of water. One is full of hot water, steaming hot water, and the other one's full of tepid water. There's a gold coin or a coin or whatever your heart desires at the bottom of those buckets, but you've got a blindfold on. You don't know which one has got the hot or the tepid water. If you put your hand, and let's say this is the water line here, right? Here and here. If you put your hand into the tepid water, well, you can kind of feel around in there, right? And then you can get yourself down there and you can see what's at the bottom of the bucket. If you put your hand in the hot water, you're going to pull that hand out pretty quickly, showing you that there's a rejection there, right? And they're the kind of moves that we're looking for on here. Then you kind of bring in the wicks into play, looking for that absorption, looking for those late shorts or late longs if we're playing the highs to be absorbed and then to trade those rejections. That's just personally how I like to trade. So I'm always asking myself, is price ranging or is it trending, right? On any chart, if price is really ranging, is really trending, you want to see these large, or I want to see these large aggressive expansions, these relatively short consolidations, expansions, consolidations, expansions. As you start to see the price action wane and you tell that you've started to establish a range, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can draw ranges by hand, actually, a good friend, Trader Dank, is probably one of the best in terms of drawing out these ranges and stuff, right? Has an unbelievable level from that. And obviously, working so closely with SC over the years, and I've been fortunate to do as well and learn from the man himself, there's probably none finer than these guys in the game. Actually, Pitt, I have to say as well, is pretty damn sick of it. He's pretty damn sick at it as well. Or you can use things like volume, all right, using volume profile. I think this actually probably is a slightly better way for most people to understand these type of ranges, all right? If we just pop that on there and look at this consolidation here, for example, deviations of these levels, price coming back in, you can see the range playing from one side to the other, deviate the lows, then eventually look, when we break out of these highs, if we extend the value area high across here, just as an example, you can see when you do break out of these and then price really can't get back in, that's when we're looking for that move higher. So establishing whether we're ranging or trend or trending is always a key element, certainly of how I trade. And I think, you know, probably most traders or professional traders are kind of taking that into account. So at the minute, this is kind of still in a larger, higher time frame range. We'll see when we move on to the 4 hour that we can see we did have a big drop here in establishing a trend. So I either want to see price back above this level, back in the range, and we start to look higher. If this flush was more of a news event and the market isn't really willing, you know, to seek out prices lower down, then, you know, there's no reason the price shouldn't be looking to get absorbed here. But I do think this is starting to look like an underside rejection. So how can we play this in terms of looking for the upside or the downside? If I wanted to be really aggressive and move in here on the 4 hour, and let's just have a look at this. This whole pump here on the 4 hour was then retraced in 2 candles. All right. So if I'm looking at this area here, I'm saying, okay, this is kind of the key area of consolidation within here. Price came in. This is what led to the pump. So this area here, price has got a real kind of decision to make, in my opinion. If we look just at the localized area of support and resistance through here, price came in, found support here. Obviously, this is a very long wick, but it does still establish itself within this area. But I'm very, very interested in this. Small amount of support, small consolidation, price flushed out the lows, right? Then when price got back above this area, that's when we saw that initial pump, yeah? And then this area here is what supported price through this move as well. Then we've obviously come back up to here. We wanted to see price back above this on a daily scale, which we didn't get, but on a 4 hour scale, you can see this really strong close. What I would say about this, and we're obviously running our crash recovery at the moment, so if you're not aware about that, we've opened the Discord for free for 30 days. You get all of the premium channels, you get all of the calls, all the education, all the content, everything you can imagine. So, you know, if you want to be involved in that, please do go. You can probably find something in the description. If not, please do reach out to me on Twitter or go over to the Birb Nest Twitter profile or to Crypto Birb's profile. You can find out how you can get that access. Because, you know, talking about this in yesterday's show, talking about, you know, rising from the ashes a little bit, if you will, and things that you really want to make sure you're studying so that you can better yourself and improve in the future. One of those key things was FOMO. Obviously, you know, a lot of people have seen this candle here, this big expansion, people looking maybe slightly on 2 lower time frames, and you're seeing that move higher, and it's like, okay, this is going up, and then people do just enter the market really, really late. You get this short squeeze. What happens? Price gets back under this level, we close under this level, and then the market flushes out and even takes out those initial participants, anybody that was probably long within here or within this breakout above this level or this breaker here. So what does that mean from here? Well, ultimately, if this was, you know, if this was something a little bit unqualified, and what I mean by that is if that's a news event, if there's something that's really kind of come out of nowhere that's caused this drop, then holding this level is what I'm really interested to see here. My playbook, however, is still being on the daily. Because, you know, if I get a close below this level here, I think there's a much higher chance we start running out some of these lows. Yeah, if we hold this area and we do get back above here in the range, for me, price is still showing some strength here, especially to come back from yesterday's drop. The market is just exhausting people. You can see it everywhere. You know, even traders that I'm speaking to at funds and that at the moment, you know, they're really not having the easiest time with this. Yes, we've had wonderful price action for a long time on the NASDAQ, right? But crypto has just been treacherous. So how does that then play into what we're seeing with some of the other assets? So let me just make a couple of notes here. We've got Craigie Boy. We'll take a look at SUI for sure, my friend. We're going to take a look at ETH, BTCD, SUI. And please remember, guys, pop it in the chat if you would like me to take a look at any particular token. Just pop it in the chat for me, yeah? And I will try my absolute best to get around to that in the next kind of 20 minutes. Let me just check very quickly if we've had any requests come in as well. The team might have just popped a couple across for me, so just looking here. Okay. Beautiful. Jibril Master, hello, mate. Great to have you back with us. Oh, yeah, sorry, somebody's asked for Asta here as well. Let's have a look. Beautiful. Yeah, let's have a look at Solana as well. I agree with that. And stable, which, wow. Yeah, that thing really went down hard, didn't it? So I can imagine a lot of people wanting to look at that too. So we'll definitely take a look. And what was the other one that we were asked for here as well? Solana. Brilliant. So if you've got any others, guys, do pop them in the chat. Absolutely will check out Asta for the channel master. So hopefully that's clear and not too waffly on Bitcoin, right? Ultimately, if you want the TLDR version of this, price stepping back into this range, we just look at these, this area here, high to low, or even better. Let's get a volume profile on this week. So I do find this really, really interesting here when we look at this from a volume perspective as well. I think we've got the one that we used on Monday's show. There we go. So we can still have the same range, right? Now, obviously, we've got new information here, but this really, really interests me because the range has been incredibly clean here. So if I'm looking at this in terms of continuation of utilizing this range, then I'd be looking at something like this, right? And what we can see here, price step back into the value area. And this is really, really important because, volume traders will tell you there's an incredibly high probability that when you deviate a value area low or high, the odds of visiting the other side of that value area are incredibly high, above 70%, I believe. People, you're more than welcome to correct me on those statistics. I know that they do change. So if we leave that there for a moment, and then we take in our new area, which covers everything here, right? We can see this underside rejection from here. Deviation, price steps back in the range, expands the high, price coming back in the range, found an initial path of support here. Remember, obviously when we had the other lines there, this was the low at the time. The new information that's coming here has pushed this range low down. So again, for me, if I look at this, I'm saying about 110,842 and change, that kind of area. I want to see price step back into there. Now, if we overlay that with what we'd be looking for on a weekly scale and a daily scale as well, we can see here how that aligns. That value area low is just above January 2025 high, and we can see the rejection that came in from this level as well, which has been key, 111,987. So what's the play here is get back above this, look for the area retests or pullbacks of any nature, look for that absorption, look for buyers to step in there, and then we would look to be targeting up towards the range highs. And you can see the volume area high here, value area high, so it's sat literally right above this key level that we've got at 119,488. And I love that confluence. I think it's incredibly, incredibly clean. All right. BC, yeah, look, no worries, my friend. So we're now going to cover and quickly run through ETH, Bitcoin dominance, SUI, Asta stable, and Solana for you guys, all right? But on those basic principles. So let's take a look, first of all, actually, at Bitcoin dominance. This is just really, really key, all right? Now, very, very basic approach to this. We've got the key levels marked out, which have been of major interest. If we take our chart here and we add a line chart of Bitcoin over the top, we can see, sorry, not Bitcoin, Ethereum. Yeah, we can see here Bitcoin dominance dropping. That move comes into Ethereum here. It comes then into alts, and this is what people are really, really watching. You real altcoin traders that it's just been an absolute nightmare cycle for. Are watching for this exact thing, right? They want price down lower. Unfortunately, it found a lot of support down here at our 57.71 level, just a key pivot point throughout the market for BTCD, in my opinion. And breaking back down below this is what really needs to happen before, in my opinion, we see any major resurgence in altcoins that aren't real outliers. The other caveat I would like to layer in there as well is the fact that I don't just think that if Bitcoin dominance starts to drop like this, we're just going to see these old school alt rallies like we used to, where everything's just really ripping. We are in a market, I believe, more than ever in crypto that really is a flight to quality. Okay, and what I mean by that is these projects need to have a bit of revenue, they need to have good founders, they need to have an active community. Finding these gems in this sea of, no offense, but absolute trash, most of it, and oversaturated trash, right? I mean, I remember when I first came to this space, there were like a few hundred altcoins, right? Maybe 1,000, you know. And now there's millions, and it becomes very, very difficult to isolate those projects. And you've got to really kind of get in deep and really understand the projects, what's driving them. Do they have a, you know, an application? Are they something that, and I don't mean like a web app, but, you know, I'm talking about actually the application in the world that's going to keep that investment driving into them when the crypto market really, really turns. We've seen such volatility. Miguel, hello, mate. Great to have you with us again. So, you know, ultimately, short story here. First level, I want to see Bitcoin dominance back down below before I even look at sniffing towards alts, apart from maybe some outliers. And again, all of this would be in spot holdings, is 58.8. All right, so let's get ourselves onto ETH, shall we? See how the old squigglies have been treating us. So, as we can see on here, and I'm going to drop this down because most of the work we've been doing here with Ethereum has been on the 4-hour time frame. All right, so this is a weekly area of demand, very strong, led to this lovely pump here, this initial recovery here after we saw the major drop. Now, another area, if we zoom out here, is this key resistance level through here. Right, why is that important? I mean, just look how long it capped the market from. This is March 2024. Rejected price here, rejected here, rejected here, and then what do we get? This beautiful rip above it, a retest of it, and this area has just been an absolute bastion. So if that really starts to give out, it's quite a difficult play here for me, actually, with ETH. But I think we'll look at this on the 4-hour, a little bit like Bitcoin. We've got these kind of untapped lows below us here. We could easily see price start to flush down below those. Now, what was the plan? Well, the plan was this, as we can see here, right, from Monday's show. Price comes down into here. We look for the buyers, price pumps. Where did we reject? The immediate high. Now, I really, or I certainly hope I'm not one of these people that comes onto the show and, you know, I like to show everybody when I'm wrong as well as when I'm right, because actually being right and wrong matters a lot less in this market. What really matters is your P&L at the end of the week, end of the month, and most importantly, at the end of the year, right? So the playbook, as we've discussed, this was the point that we were short the market down to this level. We found support here. This was for your aggressive buyers. I was not a participant here. I like to see confirmation. We got back above this area again. Remember, if this is where the sellers are in control, if we can get above this area, you know, put them in the squeeze, we get back to these levels, that's where you can look to take it. Obviously here as well, just kept rejecting at local levels. And that's why the playbook has been one of taking profits early, booking profits early, because aside from that, it's a real struggle to hold a lot of these positions at the moment. I like the play of kind of feathering into these or pyramiding to these at a lower level on a lower time frame, trying to keep a section of that trade alive, waiting for the reclaim of key levels and adding to it as you're moving up, using the profit you've made on those initial moves. Unfortunately, most of these moves, you've been taking that partial profit at your key targets, the local liquidity, and then price has often been coming back to flush out. However, it's fine, you know, if you're taking these trades from the key level, the win rate has actually still held very well through October throughout the team. And the reason for that is because the profits have been less, the return on risk has been less, and that's because of the nature of the moves. But getting in and out at the moment, in my opinion, has certainly been the cleanest play. Now, obviously we got the flush ups here. Now we're back down to this level, but we're still holding this, right? So I need to see price back down below this consolidation here, really, before I'm looking to before I would look to actively short this. And I'd be very cautious about this low here. So, for example, I would either want to see something like this, and then price actually start to get a little bit stuck below here on the lower time frames, in which case we would then look for this. Or what I prefer to see, obviously, you know, because it's better all round if we've got crypto going up, is to see this level thing and then a very quick recovery back above here. If we got that play, then I think price is going to start to look up from here. Why? Because I think we're flushing out local liquidity. And if those traders get trapped and the move goes back up and the market turns against them quickly, the chances then of a slightly more explosive move higher, become better chances of that happening. So that's where I am with ETH here as well. Happy to play this one on the 4-hour, but again, not really right from here. I would really need to see some form of recovery here, some form of strength. But holding this area, I think, is still a positive sign here. We haven't really seen the deepest correction. So buyers obviously still willing to step in here, or maybe it's just a lack of sell pressure. But either way, this is holding up okay. So just to slot this in the middle here, right, the NASDAQ. This is just such a key instrument to keep an eye on, in my opinion. the equity markets, which have been strong. You know, there's been an awful lot of correlation through this cycle between Bitcoin and crypto in general with the equity markets. Now, you know, what's good for the goose is typically good for the gander, right? And that means that while we're seeing strength in risk assets in traditional markets, that strength normally flows through into cryptocurrency. And while that has been, let's say, a turbulent relationship at best at the moment, this was a really key point for me. Look, this was the massive flush out on that Friday that really just crushed a lot of crypto. And obviously we can see what it did with the NASDAQ as well here. But it's basically recovered that and is now sat just below all-time highs. I really want to see the NASDAQ hold this level here. It's a pretty arbitrary level in truth, because if we look at it here, it's just an area that covers these key wicks. You know, we had this 3 drive up into this area, then the sell-off, and price quickly recovered this. So holding this area here and using it as a base to move higher is the kind of stability that I'd really like to see here from the NASDAQ. And I think then that market hunger for risk appetite, I should say, could then well flow down into crypto. Right, so let's take a look at SUI for our friend Craigie Boy, shall we? I can't remember what we covered SUI on. I don't know if it was Binance. No, obviously not. Oh, well, let's just do it on a nice clean chart. Why not? So SUI obviously just had this absolute train wreck of a wick. Obviously, we saw this on a lot of altcoins. I actually had a really good question from a viewer yesterday on the launch of our crash recovery show. Might have been Miguel actually, or Michael, but someone said, look, what do you do about these massive wicks? And it's an interesting one, right? Because it really does take a lot of the kind of data away from you. So the way that I look at it is this: I still establish the key levels of support and resistance before these. And let's not forget that at one point, this was one of the most gigantic bearish candles probably across any asset, but that got bought up quite aggressively, all right? Again, with liquidity cascades, you've got to be careful with these wicks. If a wick looks just too ridiculous, then make sure that you've got it, all right, that you understand these key levels still. Where is the support? Where is price kind of holding? So if I look in here, I can see a few key areas on SUI, right? You've got this low here before price moved up. Obviously, this area here, which is key as well, because price wicked down below this and then came back. If I then line this up with this area here, and I'm saying, okay, there's obviously something there, right, that's stopping the market at this level. What's that? Well, it's typically strength from buyers. It's typically a level that has some form of significance. So let's pop it on there, first of all, using a horizontal line, right? Just roughly. On the bodies, good place to start. Looking across here, price holding that level nicely. Now, if I look here, I can see the price interaction with this level. Now, I do tend to draw these more as boxes, right? I'll tell you for why, because it's not that common that you see, you know, a line hold up. These things are obviously often a lot more like areas. So I do try and target most of the wicks to see the absorption, because then we can understand when price moves against that, where those kind of key areas are. Rather than seeing a deviation below a line, it comes back above. Sometimes, you know, it needs to be a slightly broader area. So let's lock that in. All right, now for me, I think that's quite a nice level here. So if we look at what this means, well, if we look all the way back through here, we can see there was some form of resistance in this area here. We popped above, deviating. What do we do here? We trapped buyers. Price gets back below this level. Look at the retest. Look at the wicks starting to show absorption here. Then look at the breakdown of this consolidation, the retest. Price flushes out. Now, price came back up here. Rejection here. I'm the kind of trader, no shame at all to say that I think that's an area ripe for shorting there. Obviously, you would have only got short-term plays on this. Yeah, you had 3 days of downside. I would have expected a move down into these lows, but price showed a lot of strength here. And look at this move back above. Yeah. Now, it's very difficult to fade those type of moves, but even with this one, you know, that was a great recovery move above here as well. But this was nice, obviously led to that major price action to the upside. How often do we see this in risk assets, especially in crypto? Because this thing just absolutely rips and doesn't give you any re-entry. Crypto hero, hello mate. Not Crypto Birb with you today, I'm afraid, although you do have the wonderful pleasure of his immense company and talents later on today, I think 4 p.m. UTC, when he's going to be hosting a show, private show internally for all members. But do remember, you can get that for free at the moment. There's no catches, there's no renewal nonsense or that. You can just get access to the premium Discord. All of our shows, we're doing a show a day, 5 days a week over the month. So you're going to get 20 shows in total, run by different traders within the team. And today, Crypto Birb is doing a real quality show. So just come along, grab yourself free entry to that. You can find information, I believe, in the details, but certainly on Twitter as well. And if you can't, please do reach out and you can catch his show later. But I'm BC Richfield, I'm head of trading over at the Birb Nest. So I'm afraid, my friend, you're just going to have to put up with me today, but I will definitely check link for you. Not a problem. Let me just take a quick sip of tea. Right, so this level then holds significance. We can see it here, buyers stepping in here. So this, for me, I'm just looking at this, I'm saying, okay, well, if this is the area buyers are willing to step in, then when we revisit these areas, we can learn a lot from them, right? So this area, again, we see this play a key role. So now I've got to play it immediately. I can say to myself, well, actually, if we look to hold this level, I can look for some confirmation and try and get some confirmation longs. And I'll show you exactly where I would look for that from. However, if we start to close below this level, and if we take out this low, then, you know, ultimately I will be targeting lower. I would look to these. Yes, the liquidity's been flushed out below them, but the liquidity got flushed out of absolutely everything. So I'm not going to say if we break down below there, then we're going to the bottom of this wick. I would still be looking back here where there's still relevance in the price action. Again, kind of building out on the points we made yesterday about how we would treat these wicks. So what would the playbook be? So the playbook for me, the super aggressive playbook, yeah, would see price above here. This would set an area of demand for me. The best scenario for this would be if we flushed out the low. So if we just recovered this from here, set this level and then move up, I would have less confidence in this long, but I would trade the technicals, but I would trade them locally into these areas, all right? What I'd really like to see is price flush out the low, then get back above this. Then we get the retest and price move higher. For me, we've taken liquidity from the market, then we've trapped some late sellers. And what we bring in here is slightly different level as well, which it is, and I'm just going to extend this here. It will look a bit messy, but bear with me. This brings in our breaker. And I love these moves. They're some of my favorite moves to trade, right? And I'll tell you for why. When you're looking at these liquidity sweeps at highs, lows, wherever you are, right? Then, and these highs give three really good examples here, but just kind of looking at this one, if we get this liquidity sweep, right, price comes in. What's this? Deviation, to quote the legend himself, SC, which I always hear his voice in my head whenever I say deviation. Then price gets back in here. What am I looking for? I'm looking for where, you know, the buyers took control of this market. Sellers tried to push the market down. This is the buyers then taking out those sellers. Those buyers then get trapped. So the low of this area here, let me draw it in properly for you. Right, this area, or if I look at it as a box, that's our breaker, right? That's what we've seen on these other charts. That's what's treated us and served us so well, especially on ETH, alts, and Bitcoin as well. And this is something that I trade on the NASDAQ every single day with members, right? Looking for these consolidations and look for the offside move, price then closing back down. When you revisit these areas, think of it like this. It's a very clean way to think of it. So if you're holding through this, you're long here, and then the price moves against you really quickly, you're either getting stopped out of these levels because you've got fixed risk, or a lot more of a fund trading way will be, you know, or longer term players are holding through this drawdown, expecting price to move higher. However, price kind of gets back to this level and really doesn't show much. What it allows is for those longs to mitigate here, to cover, to hedge, you know, to open positions in the other direction, to cover for, you know, and hedge for their long, or they can just get out of the market here. And often when you see these rejections is when you get these big moves. Now, yes, this was a news catalyst, right? But if we look at the market in other areas, you can see it, you know, just to give you a bullish example as well, this is the very small consolidation in here. Yeah, what happened? Small consolidation, excuse me, price flushed out the lows, found initial rejection here, got back above, not the cleanest, got back below here, but in doing so, set this area here as the breaker. And also, as we can see, it was respecting these new areas of demand that were created on the way up, or order blocks, yeah. So down close candles, price closing above, price coming back into this area, buyers are still here. If they're not still here, you're looking for an inversion of this area. Then if the buying strength isn't there, the chances are it's a bit of weakness. Those people look to close those positions out, or they're getting absorbed, and then price is seeking liquidity lower. Yeah, we look for those untapped lows, just to give you a bit of context on what we're looking for, right? So exactly the same plan here. I would really love to see this area turn into a breaker, price flush out the lows, get back above. So closes below here. Yeah. So closes below here, we could look at a retest of this side and then move lower. If not, if we recover this area here, this would be my kind of B setup longs to get above this, and that would take a daily close, right? Or I'm looking for this would be my preferred move. Let's flush this out, see a little bit of pain here, price gets back up, and then let's see if we hold this area. And you don't need to jump into these trades, right? You can wait for a little bit of confirmation. Let's look at this breaker as an example, or let's look at this area here as an example. Even if you're using your daily candles, don't be afraid to be later to moves and have more confirmation, right? By all means, if you're somebody that's really got a system nailed in of trading these with real limit orders at key levels, you know, I'm not here to tell you what to do, guys. This is just how I see the market, all right? But for me, you know, if you're in here, yeah, you could try and short this right away, and I might do the same in terms of aggressive plays. You know, or you can wait for the market to give you a little bit of an indication that it's starting to reject it. So it makes this higher. And then you just start to see these rejections. You get this pin bar candle here, and then you get this bearish engulfing candle, which closes us below. Yeah, that for me would be a really good trigger in here to look for short positions. Okay, but again, I would naturally just be kind of targeting these lows here initially. And you know, I'm not saying you can expect that kind of candle, obviously, right? But if we look at the same move here, if we look at the move to the highs here, what do we get? Price sets down, we get a beautiful bullish engulfing candle here. Even if you waited in here and you thought, well, I want to see a retest, there's not a lot of strength coming in here, right? This candle then closes above, body closes above this one, but then we get this beautiful engulfing candle here, which closes above, creating a new area of demand. And then this becomes a point that we can then look to take that long position into these highs. And again, hold some of the position, add to it as you start to move higher, and let yourself kind of make some profit on the way up. All right, so that's where I am with SUI. I think the daily plan with that is just so very clean. I would definitely be focusing that on the daily. Right, let's take a look at Asta. Actually, I've got Asta on here now. Crazy squiggles all over it. So Craigie boy, remember for me, we're on the OKX chart for SUI, all right? For when we go back to that one next week. Right, let's take a quick look at Asta. So unfortunately with Asta, we've got what we didn't particularly want to see here, right? Again, this is a spot play for me, so I'm not actively trading this with leverage. But as we covered last week and as we have done through here, the blue squiggles doing their part. We never got the confirmation of this move. Remember, we wanted to see a sweep of the low, price breaking and closing above this level here. We didn't get it. Remember, if we're not getting the long plays, we mark out those key areas to see those rejections. The next move, like we were just discussing on SUI, was to look for price to have an aggressive run of the lows and then that V-shaped type recovery that we discussed earlier. That powerful, sharp move down for that recovery as price establishes itself here. I think that would have been good positions for longs. Unfortunately, we got option 3, which is price broke down. And look, we just holding this area. Just holding this area, showing weakness, no follow through. Now price is really starting to sell off. So let's make a new plan for where we are. This low here is the first point that I would really like to see price recover. Let's extend that across as well, because that's still a key area here. All right, because then if we look, for me, you know, I can only go on what I got on the chart. This was the consolidation, very small consolidation that led to that pump. And that's unfortunately for everyone why that level needs back down to here. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I've definitely seen it happen with a lot of assets, and very good assets in the crypto space as well. So if it does, in truth, I think I would be willing to have a punt at this here to add some more spot, right? I'm still holding some spot. I'm not massively exposed to it, to be honest, but I do obviously follow through with my own plans. So, you know, when we got into this area here, I did buy some more. I didn't really get a good position to be out of, but I was also a buyer here originally, which is I've got a little bit of holdings from. I thought it's a good area to rebuy. Price is kind of flushed out below that. I'm not looking to sell it. You know, it's only even in a minimum loss if you look at the average price that's coming in, but I'm just looking to add some more down here. I got very, very heavily out here for reasons I've explained on the previous live shows. And in truth, you know, I didn't really have, I traded this as a trader would trade it. I didn't have the conviction to hold it. And I thought it would cost me a little bit, actually. There's a few times it looked like this was going to break back out. And I thought, maybe I kind of sold this off too early. That and stable were obviously the key ones that we were selling. And, you know, market, you know, unfortunately for the market, but at least for my position, worked out that it did make that move lower. So where are we with it now? Again, and actually, do you know what I'm going to get? Let's just do this. Right? You can all see now the reasoning that we had behind this, right? So if we just get this, we can just hide that. Make a new plan with a nice, clean, fresh chart. This is still a key level. But again, if this is really the flush out of liquidity here, the first place I want to see price back above is this. Small consolidation here.
Yeah, price now flushing out the lows. If we can trap those late shorters, get back above here, I think that's the real play. Fast move back above here, aggressive longs from here. And I mean aggressive, safer longs, but tricky still because we've got this resistance above. This is what I'd normally be looking at in terms of the breaker, right? So, seeing this recovery from here, looking for a retest of this, and then trading this level to level, all right? However, there's an interesting kind of point through here because we've got a localized SR here, right? If I'm looking, focusing really on these wicks here, obviously it follows through to that bit as well. But if I'm just looking locally here and I'm saying, okay, what if I just grab this area through here? I think that's probably quite a key area for price, right? Yeah, this was where, price tried to find support here. Buyers tried to step in back at this initial level where the buys were so strong previously, exactly the same reason I tried to step in. Price quickly got that rejection below, underside retest, and then again, this is the Friday, so we saw that flush. Again, not as bad as it was for some, right? For some other assets, I mean. Then we come back to this area, and now the sellers are showing control here. Price rejects again. Now it's the acceptance that actually it's not gaining any acceptance at that price. And, people are ultimately going to have to offer this lower for interest. And then prices come back down. It's now flushing through this level. And that's why it's so key to see us recover this level, because as we look left, there's not really much else other than this very inefficient move higher before we get to this consolidation. That's the last place we can really see on the charts where the buyers were active. All right, so again, pretty clean plan on this. We don't really have the data to do tons on the daily, right? Obviously it's still a relatively new asset, but if I was looking at this from a daily plan, it would pretty much be the same, but this would be the consolidation that I'd be focused on now that we flushed out this low. All right, but realistically, let's get back above 1.285, and I think this thing can then really fly. If it doesn't, we deviate this level and we close back below, then I would have strong conviction we're looking to flush out this local low. All right. Let's have a look. Yeah, I know. I agree, Craigie boy. I do still think there's opportunities in this market. I know a lot of people are super bearish in that at the moment, but I think the time to be bearish was higher. I know that's a really obvious and somewhat twattish thing to say, but it's not like I haven't been saying that. It's not like I'm just making it up now going, oh yeah, I was just, trying to long everything at the top. Like we weren't, we were actively shorting assets, or some of them, not all of them for sure. And ones like this, not at all, because I'm looking to add to my spot holdings. That's the difference. Right. So just got a couple of others to finish off on. Let's take a quick look at Stable. Actually, that thing has absolutely taken some hits. And just to kind of lay this out again, this is another one that's pretty intrinsic on the 4-hour plan, but again on a daily scale, getting back above this level. Yeah, getting back above this consolidation here, I think would be a really good sign of strength. If we're looking now at the squiggle plans, we can see unfortunately this one came true, this one didn't. All right, and as we look at this here, these plans remain. I'm not really interested in adding to this until we get back above here. If I look across again, yeah, there's not really much information for me down here. Yeah. But we can see that really this consolidation, or this area here that started to this, was very key. Price kind of got caught up in this again. I think people positioning, trying to go long on this, flushed out. What we want to see, or what I want to see, is this basically turning into a big deviation that's really kind of caught people offside. And then for this plan here to play out. All right. But ultimately at the moment, we are showing weakness here. And I think the likelihood is that if we start to close below this level here, again, focusing on this consolidation, this level's 0.10754, then I think, there's a higher likelihood for sure. If we do flush down below that, we see that absorption, we come back to those levels, then I think this is going to be the key to watch out for, how price reacts down here at these equal lows. Okay, guys, so that is Stable. And then let's take a look at Link. For our friend that asked for Link, who was that? Crypto Hero. Right, okay, hopefully I haven't waffled on too long and you're still around, Crypto Hero. Let's see what we were looking at here. So this is the squigglies. Move this onto a daily here. This was a key area for me, right? Aggressive breakout from this consolidation. Price held really, really well through here until it didn't. And then when it flushed out, you see the wicks moving to the upside, the absorption stepping in here. You can see from previous TA through here, this is the area we were looking to short. We got exactly the rejections we were looking for, and it really was a brutal sell-off. To be honest, I remember looking at this thinking, this is what, January or February time, I think? Feb, yeah, and we're just at the beginning of Feb, that this wick here I thought could really, flush out from that, catch people offside and move above, and we just continue to show weakness and sell off, right? So again, That's why this level's key here, and this level remains key for me. In fact, I just need to extend this across from here. We can see what happened. We lose the level, underside retest, sell off. We're now back at this level again, looking to sell off. Would I be looking to actively short this at the moment? Not really. I would much rather wait to see how price comes into this level. If we can have a nice sharp reaction at this, even still, I want to see price above here, but with this key resistance being above, for me, there's no other real playbook than this from a safety point of view. Because look, it's not that I don't think these can really run. I really think that they can, but you know, I do want to do so with at least some support on my side, right? And we can see price above here. Buyers did step in. Okay, it was tentative, but I think we get back above this now. There's no reason to be able to get back above this level unless there really is a commitment from buyers. All right, we want to see this level hold on link. God, that's pretty much where I am actually. But let me just throw the 4 hour in here as well, mate, so that we can look if you're a slightly lower time frame trader. The big problem we have here is this resistance, right? So I'd like to see price above this consolidation, but then we are still slamming straight into this. I'm not saying this thing's going to absolutely, you know, guarantee a rejection here, but we can see if we look at the data in front of us, that's what's happening so far. So again, a sharp move above here, and then looking for the 4 hour to establish itself here, I think would still be the best place. If not, flushes and recoveries of this low on the 4 hour. So sharp, aggressive recoveries, and then looking for that market structure, looking for that move, yeah, the high that took out the low, looking for those kind of plays to establish that strength. And then I think, you know, if we get that aggressive recovery, if we do start shifting that market structure, I think there could be some good buys in here, and it gives us some room to move a little bit higher. All right. And that's where we are with Link, ladies and gentlemen. Miguel, straight in there. Yeah, no problem, mate. XPL, and then we'll call it a day. But do remember, Crypto Bird's going to be live later for everyone in the private Discord as well, which you can join for free. So it's not like a closed network thing. It's just we really want to bring together people that have really been hurt in this crash, people that, you know, maybe feeling a little bit lost at the moment. It was very, very brutal. I know a lot of people that got badly taken out. And there's people that were showing really good risk management, thought, you know, everything was in place that they needed to, only to find out that, you know, they'd lost, you know, a lot of money, and, you know, a lot of tokens that people have a lot of kind of, you know, belief and attachment to as well. So if that does interest you, like I said, the whole Discord is open. You get all of the courses, you get all of the access to the trading team, you get the access to all of our official calls, which are all set out, obviously ahead of time and managed throughout. So yeah, please do reach out, and you can get the information for that on our Twitter. There's no catch here. You know, nobody's going to try and tie you into an auto renewal beyond the 30 days and blah, blah, blah. It's just to really kind of bring out the best in this space that we've seen so often, where good people come together to try and help one another get back on their feet. So XPL, my friend. Unfortunately, the last time we looked at this again, we got the side of the plan that we didn't really want to see. We didn't exactly get the greatest underside retest here. And by the way, somebody asked me this question the other day. I thought it was a really, really good question. This is tricky because of this, but imagine you have more data than that, yeah, because you're trading this into when this launched on the exchange, but there'll be more data than that, obviously, with other exchanges that it launched on previously. So, you know, this move here, move down, retest, sell off into this low. Okay, well, we didn't get the retest here, right? We got the close below here. Price did have a small pullback, so if you're a lower time frame trader, you might have grabbed a piece. But then as you move down, somebody asked me the other day, okay, well, how are you looking at this then in terms of continuation plays? Well, what I look for here, if price is grinding down, I'm looking for these up close candles, yeah, these bullish candles here to be closed below, and I'm looking for rejections when we get into these areas. For example, this one here. Just do this in red so it signifies it a bit better. What happened? Price closed below. We look for price to short here, but actually had a really nice close above. And again, I would be looking at this as a breaker here, and I'd be thinking, right, if I get a bullish retest of this area, then I'm looking to pump it, obviously only intraday, because we've got a key pivot point here, you know, that we expect to offer resistance. But, you know, I would absolutely be on board with that. But then what I'm definitely on board with is then when price violates that and closes below, showing me weakness, we can then target the prior lows. Again, tricky because you don't have that data, but you could have traded that into this here as well. So with this one now, let's go a lot further down. What a short that would have been, by the way. Not that I certainly don't think I would have held through that. Okay, this is interesting and a little bit of an ugly range here as well. I can see the real kind of volume purists kind of having a bit of an issue with this, but please do reach out if you are if you do. Deviations of this low, price getting back above the value area low, I think would be a great start. But actually, I think the point of control is key here. Look at the volume traded at this level, and I think it has been obviously a little bit illiquid. We can see the gapping, but I do think the level here around about 0.4072 is going to be a key one. So price getting itself back above that. In truth, for just how aggressively this has dropped, this huge move down, big well, McDonald's next move for me. Yeah, I think McDonald's applications are probably through the roof at the moment, mate. So good luck. If you need a reference, I'm sure there's plenty of people that can help at the moment. So I think, look, the safest play for me is this. I would look at doing something like this. I'd look at price establishing yourself back above here, looking to be a little bit careful at the value area here, trading up into this level, and then just trying to hold as much of this as you can, taking out this key level here, establishing above here. I think this thing can really fly, because then really it's this area, I would say, down around about here, that is going to be the key thing for price to reclaim. All right, so I know not lots of great news on the immediate horizon, but I do think this is the safest play. Let's look for, a short squeeze here, price to pop out above, rehold this area, and then I think we can really start to see some headway earlier. Ball grab. All right, just in time. All right, one more. All right. Oh God, what do we look at Pengu on? Let's start with a clean chart here, shall we? Again, huge wick lower. This is actually a very, very simple playbook for me here on Pengu. I want to see price, first of all, either above this, if caveat here is, let me draw this one in as well. So at the moment, price above here. If we do something like this, however, take some liquidity and trap some people, then I'd be happier to take a more aggressive play from here. But again, looking to take this level to level approach, okay? If we don't come down to sweep that low and price does just kind of move from here, I would want to see it above here first. I'd consider longs of this area, because we would be setting a bullish, an area of demand basically, or a bullish order block here. So retests of that would be quite risky longs, but in truth, I would really want to see price above here. I think this is the key consolidation, suppressing price at the moment. If we can, ultimately turn the market in those favors, overcome those sellers that are controlling the market at the moment, then we're going to be, expanding up, looking for these prior consolidations and ultimately these highs that are above here. All right, legends, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate you being on here. Please don't forget about the crash recovery program. If you do need some help, if you do want to reach out, if you do want to talk to other traders, get involved in the community, which obviously I'm a little bit biased, but in my opinion is the very best in terms of education for sure. And, the calls, which are just absolutely immense. You get access to all of these, the live statistics and everything. And even if you're not a member, you can see these prints at the end of every month on our website. So wishing you all a fantastic week ahead. Obviously, I'll be live with you all again on Monday. Bullgram, you're very, very welcome, my friend, as is everybody else on the show today. Appreciate each and every one of you. Hope to see a load of you over at the Nest with us as well. And don't forget, if you do get yourself in today in a couple of hours' time, we've got Crypto Birb taking the privately hosted show for everyone, talking about his views on the market, what causes this, and how he's looking to build this recovery out. Have a wonderful week ahead, everyone. Mr. Trickle, hello, mate. Very welcome. And have a wonderful week ahead, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you all around the Nest.